Now it's time to bring in our first guest, Ed Slott. Ed is an author, speaker, and television host. He's been called the best source for IRA advice by the Wall Street Journal and America's IRA expert by Mutual Funds magazine. And we're excited to have Ed back here on the Income Generation. Thanks for being back.
Thanks, Dave. Great to be back.
Hey, so tell us, what are some of the most common misconceptions about required minimum distributions that you hear from folks?
Well, some people don't understand which accounts are subject to them and which are not. For example, all IRAs are subject to them. Once you hit 70 and a half, you have to start taking the money out. But if you're in a 401k and still working, many plans allow you to defer RMDs. It's called the still working exception, but people get confused. They figure, oh, if I'm still working, I don't have to take them from anywhere. Now, that's not true. It's just that plan where you're working from. That still working exception never, ever applies to other plans or IRAs. You still have to take from your IRAs. Another mistake we see is with spouses, husbands and wives. They sometimes get confused thinking, well, it's all one tax return. Why don't we take it all from mine and even the accounts up? You can't do that. The I in IRA stands for individual. You each have to take from your own, even though the tax return will be the same. In that example, let's say the husband took it all from his, he's thinking, well, it's logical. The government's still getting the right amount. I said, no. All you did is take too much from yours and not enough from your wife's. Another mistake people make, or they say, well, and these are all logic driven, these mistakes. And that's the problem. You can't apply logic to tax law. They think, well, I have to take the money out and pay tax anyway. So why not convert it to a Roth IRA? And the answer is you can't do it because the law says so. An RMD can never be converted to a Roth IRA. You first have to take that amount out. Then once you satisfy your RMD, you can convert additional funds.
Yeah, and I'd like to get back to that 401k thing you were talking about before.
Yeah.
Let's say that I am retired, but I have some 401k money, I have some 403b money, I have some 457 money, and I happen to have some IRA money. I just worked for lots of different types of employers over my career. What do I need to know about those calculations and how it's different from if it were all in an IRA, for example?
Well, first point you make, which is a great point, you first have to take inventory of all the accounts you have that might be subject to RMD. So in your case, you have the 401k. I mean, not everybody has all of that. Most people don't, but it's a good example. So what happens is for your IRAs, there's a special rule that says your RMD can be taken from any one of the whole collection of accounts, any one or combination. The same rule applies to a 403b, but you can never take from one type of account to satisfy an RMD for another. For example, let's say you had 5 401ks. You would have to take from each 401k, and you can't take from a 401k to satisfy an RMD from an IRA or vice versa. So if you have a 401k or a 457 or however many you have, they have to be taken from each one of them.
So is that part of the reason why people typically roll these accounts over to IRAs before they retire?
Well, that's one reason. People, as they get older, and this is the crowd, the over 70 and a half crowd, want to simplify their life. They want to consolidate, and it may be a reason to roll a lot of it to an IRA, to have it all in one place and have control over that money so you're not worried about what's going on with the company.
So if I have IRAs, I can commingle it, take it out of one IRA. If I have a 403b, I can commingle it and take it out of one 403b for the 403b money. But if I've got deferred comp money or 401ks, I've got to take the RMD attributable to each separate account from that specific account. Did I say that right?
Yeah, well, deferred comp is not one of those accounts. That's a separate idea. That's not considered a retirement account. But you mean a 401k. If you have several 401ks, it has to come out. It has to be calculated from each separately and taken from each separately. But again, if you're still working for one of those 401ks, you may be able to qualify for that still working exception if the plan allows, but it won't cover you for the other plans or the companies you're not still working for. So it can get confusing.
Perfect. We can take a quick commercial break, Ed. We'll be back in a moment. And you stay with us. We'll be back here with more on the income generation. I'm David Scranton, and we'll be right back. Now it's time to bring back in author, speaker, television host, Ed Slott. Ed, thanks so much for sticking around.
Great to be back with you, Dave. Thanks.
So the whole goal here is for the government to get taxes, right? We all know that. They don't want to wait. God forbid you live to be 100. They have to wait till age 100 to get their tax money. And I alluded to this a little bit that you just heard in my monologue portion of the show, but tell our viewers a little bit more about how it might be able to affect taxation on other things, like taxation on Social Security, now that these RMDs come pouring onto your tax return.
Oh, yeah. It's not just the tax on the RMDs. They're taxable, but they increase your income to the point that it can create other taxes on other provisions. In the tax business, we call these stealth taxes because you don't see them coming. One of them, as you said, is the tax on Social Security. You might have thought, well, my income's low enough. All of a sudden you have this RMD. Now you have the tax on Social Security. Or those Medicare IRMA charges, those income-related monthly adjustment amounts for Part B and D. Or medical expenses. Remember, when you have when you have an RMD come out, it increases your income to the point where less of your medical expenses may be deductible if you're itemizing. Today, less people are itemizing. So yes, it can increase taxes in other ways. If you have high investment income, it can trigger the 3.8% tax on net investment income. So there's a lot of these other things working in the background, and this is a triggering event. Anytime you add income like an RMD, it's like a pinball machine. All the other things go on.
Now, I don't know if it was Freudian or not, but just a moment ago you mentioned Roth conversion, and then you caught yourself
right.
because you didn't mean to say that. So let's talk about Roth conversions. What are they? What types of investors should consider a Roth conversion?
Well, anybody who's worried about taxes going up in the future, and I think that should be almost everybody. We're at probably the lowest tax rates you will ever see in your lifetime. Look at the history of these things. But you also have to look at the history back that says, back in, it wasn't that many, a generation ago or so, the top tax rate exceeded 90%. Then it went down to 70%. Then in the 80s went down to 50%. The whole country did a happy dance because it was the first time in our lifetimes we were equal partners with the government on our own money. And we thought that was fantastic. Now the top rate's down into the 30s. So now is the time to strike. It's not going to get any lower, I don't think. Look at the budget deficits, over $1 trillion. At some point, the bill is going to be due. So it may be time to look at a Roth conversion and get that money out at the lowest rates possible. And that may be right now.
And your couple today making $100,000, just taking the standard deduction, is really only in the 12% federal bracket. So you're right. There's a lot of people who are living comfortably that aren't paying a lot of tax. But now that we've talked about those for whom Roth conversion might be beneficial, in the last 40 seconds or so we have left in the segment, tell our viewers maybe the types of people that should stay away from Roth conversions as a general rule.
Well, if you think your tax bracket in retirement might be lower, the whole key to tax planning is always pay taxes at the lowest rates. So if you think your rates will be lower in retirement, but you don't know, it could be higher. But if you think for sure you'll be in a lower rate in retirement, maybe a Roth isn't right for you. Or you don't have the money to pay the tax, or you'll need to tap into the money. What's the point of paying a tax to convert if you need to take that money right out to live on? So it's not for everybody. The best strategy might be doing a series of smaller partial conversions over the years. So in time, you're bringing down your taxable IRA and bringing up your tax-free Roth balance.
You don't need to do it all at once. Ed, we need to take another commercial break. Stay with us, please. You stay with us, too. We'll be right back here with more on the income generation. Now it's time to bring back in author, speaker, television host, Ed Slott. Ed, thanks for sticking around once again.
Thanks, Dave.
So you mentioned people who need to take withdrawals from IRAs or 401ks because they need to make a purchase. Let's say somebody's retired and they've lopsided all their savings into IRAs and 401k plans. So now they need to purchase an automobile, for example. And to get $40,000 out, they have to withdraw 50 or 60 to pay the tax on it. What's your best advice that you have for people to prevent that from happening?
Well, that will happen if you don't have other money saved. And one of the things you can do, if you're already in that situation, it's a tough situation. You don't have any other money. But if that's the case, chances are you'll be in a lower bracket also. And the low brackets are great brackets now. You've got to look at how far these low rates, these 10 and 12% brackets, you may be in that with the higher standard deduction. May not be as bad as you think. Or maybe for other people that may be worried about that in the future, that may be a reason to convert smaller amounts over time to Roth IRAs. So if you had to pull the money out, you could pull it out tax-free. You shouldn't be looking to beef up your tax-free savings and have some other savings. You know, it's always good to have tax risk diversification. Have some other savings if you can that are outside of IRAs, and hopefully you could tap that money because there's no tax if you have to go to your regular already taxed money.
So, you know, I know you're the tax specialist. I'm the investment guy. But, you know, as you know, I always talk about making sure your allocation is right for RMDs. In other words, trying to satisfy your RMDs from interest and dividends for as many years as you possibly can, as opposed to just taking systematic withdrawals of principal, essentially spending down your IRA. But it seems like nobody talks about that in my industry or your part of the industry. They're just as happy to let people take principal and spend it down. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't think people really know when somebody says or calls their advisor or calls their fund company and they say, I need an RMD, they just send them money. I don't think they realize which positions they're liquidating. They know that money has to come out because it's an RMD. Now, if you have a cash account, you should be more involved and say, well, which funds exactly are you liquidating? Now, if it's in an IRA, you don't have to worry about a capital gain. If you liquidate a stock in an IRA, there's no tax recognized within the IRA. It's just the whole withdrawal is taxable.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you have a 401k, it's not quite that simple because usually 401ks take withdrawals proportionally from all the funds. So if you're taking a minimum distribution, it's coming out of the stock fund, the bond fund, the target fund, the money market fund, and all that.
And if you have a Roth, you should look at, hopefully, if you have items that you think are highly appreciable, that will go up in value, that's the kind of stuff you want in a Roth, because anything that, any gains in a Roth are not only tax deferred, but better, tax free forever.
Sure, sure. I'm waiting for a nice stock market drop to do a Roth conversion myself, but that's a different story.
You know what? You got to be careful on trying to time the market with a Roth conversion. I had a client that did this almost at this time last year. She converted, I think, on December 26th, the one day the market had its largest, I think it was over 1,000-point gain on that day. And she was devastated. She was thinking about converting the whole year. Waited, she says, I'm doing it now. It was a large conversion. And then she said, oh no, it's the one day it went up. I said, but you got to look long term. That's what retirement is. You can't look transactionally one day at a time. You can't time the market with RMDs or Roth conversions.
Well, that's great words of wisdom from the accountant, but you know, we investment advisors, we can always time the market perfectly. You do realize that about us, right, Ed?
Okay, I forgot about income generation, yeah.
So Ed, thanks so much for being on the show today. Really
great,
appreciate
Dave.
having you once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back here with more right here on the Income Generation. I'm David Scranton. We'll be back in a moment.